So we're going to learn about motion paths and creating armatures today. So this little octopus here is moving along a path that I drew, and it's attached to that path. And then the shark that comes along has an armature in it that gives us more options to move. So we're going to go through those two things. The little starfish are just rotating, and what you're going to have to do in your project, you can see the first starfish, the octopus is going behind, and the second starfish, the octopus is getting bigger and going in front of it. So that gives the illusion of depth and space. And all I did to get that is that's just called the stacking order, and it's just the order of the layers here in the timeline. So the first starfish that's in front is the one on top on the timeline, and the second starfish is below the octopus on the timeline. So that's called stacking order, and that's a simple way to do that. I also made the octopus get bigger, which we'll go over as it's going in that motion path. And then to make the motion path go away, you can just hide that layer so you don't always have to see it. And then this shark, I made in Illustrator, which I'll give you some links to other tutorials if you want some Illustrator help, and I'll show you how to break it up so we can add some bones and armature to it and animate it. So you can really do anything for yours. A cool one for this would be to do like a spaceship with a star background, and if you Google NASA images, and the Hubble telescope takes some amazing images, these ones, see where it says nasa.gov? Those government photographs are in the public domain. So those are actually legal for you to use. Just be careful of taking them from websites that don't say nasa.gov. So just pay attention to where it's coming from. And these are some beautiful images that you can grab for a background image. You can also go to Pixabay or any place like that to get copyright-free images. But in case someone wants to do a space theme, you can, like where I have the octopus along the motion path, that's a library animation with its tentacles moving. So you could do a spaceship in here, and you could do some shape tweens for like the fire, or you can have lasers coming out of it. You can really do whatever you want and then have that ship set on a motion path. Okay, so I'm gonna make a new one, and action script, and if you come in here you can change it here, or just in case you're not in that window, I can come in my properties and also change the size to 1920. I'm pressing tab, 1080, and pressing enter, and then I can go to fit in window, but I actually want to zoom out a little bit with my control minus. So we're going to add a background image into here, and I have one that I've already saved, so I'm going to file, import into library, and I have this I got from Pixabay, an underwater image. And so whatever image, you can do whatever you want. Whatever image you do choose, you can see it shows up in here, and I can drag it over. And I looked for an image that was on Pixabay larger than 1920 by 1080. So make sure you choose an image that's going to be larger than your stage, because we're going to have the background moving. So you also want to choose something that has some kind of texture in it so we can actually see if it's moving. If it's a solid background, you're not going to be able to tell it's actually moving at all. So I'm going to get mine set up where I want it to start. I'm going to name my layers because we'll have a few, and I'll just call it background. And then I want to create a motion tween. And I forgot to make a graphic, so you can do it this way, or I can cancel and I can right click, convert to symbol, make it a graphic, call it ocean, press OK, and then I can right click, create motion tween, and this is going to be 12 seconds, so I want the background to last the whole time. So I'm going to come and just drag it out to get it to 12. So that it is 12-second long animation, because we have a lot of stuff that's going to happen, so we want it to look really good. So then I'm going to come out to 12 seconds. I have my time indicator here, and I'm just going to animate the background moving slowly. This is just going to give more dimension and interest. So I'm just going to go sort of like this. So making sure when I get to the bottom here, there's not a lot of texture on it. So I'm making sure I'm keeping this textured part of the image in view the whole time. And it's always good to test. And that's really slow. I think that will be a good background for what I need it for. So now I'm going to create the illustrated element that's going to become a library animation, and that's going to move along that path, the motion path we're going to make. So I'm making a new layer here, and I'm going to call it octopus because mine is going to be an octopus. You can do whatever you want. And I'm going to lock my background layer just because I have it set up the way I want it to be and I don't want to mess with it anymore. So I'm coming into my brush tool and I'm picking the fill color I want. I think I want my octopus to be orangey. And I'm going to zoom in, Control plus. I'm just getting kind of close. And I'm using the brush tool and I'm using the right bracket key to make it a little bigger. And I'm just going to draw the head of my octopus. And you can look up like cartoon images of an octopus. And I'm going to leave some space for the tentacles to live. And then I'm going to make my brush even bigger and just fill it in, because this is going to be a library animation, remember? So just get it looking good. And fill in all the spaces, because you don't want any blank spaces in there. And if you want to add some detail, you know, you can make your brush smaller and give it some like bumps. I don't know, octopus have bumpy heads. Anyway, you can spend a lot more time making yours look good. And then I want to give this some eyes just to give it a little character. So I'm going to choose white. And I think octopus eyes are like down on the bottom here. And then giving the irises to the eyes, I think adds a lot of character. And mine's going to be kind of scared because he's like running away from the shark. So I'm just going to make my brush smaller with the right bracket and have it looking like that way. So just that little bit of adding the iris to the eye, you can obviously spend a lot more time on yours. But adding little details like that will really take your animations to the next level. So you can use pen tools, you can use whatever you want. So I'm going to select this whole thing just by clicking on the layer, and I'm going to right click and convert to symbol. I'm going to call it, and press OK. And now I'm coming into my library animation because I would like to create a library animation for this. So I'm double clicking on the octopus in my library. So I'm here in this new timeline, and I'm going to call this Octo Head. So now I'm going to make, you can call it legs, leg 1. So I'm going to use my brush again. I'm going to press the eyedropper tool really quickly just to pick up this color. So I'm just pressing I on the keyboard, clicking to get that color, and then I'm pressing B to get back in my brush. And I want the leg to be underneath the head, and I'm going to make one tentacle coming out and then swirling around, and then I'm making my brush a little bigger to give it some shape, and I want to make it wider on the top because it's going to move. So then I'm just cleaning it up, and then I'm using a smaller brush with the right bracket to give it like those little tentacle things. So thinking about how you can creatively build shapes to make your animations look great without spending, you know, you don't have to spend hours and hours, but think about how you can break down the shape of whatever element you're using, simplify it, but still make it look awesome. So now I can click on this leg and I can duplicate it, and I can press V to move it. First, I'm going to rotate it with the free transform tool. So I'm going to get it kind of in the position I want it. And if I want the tentacles on the other side, I can right click, transform, and I can flip vertical. Nope, I always do that wrong. I can right click, transform, flip horizontal, and then just adjust it a little more. So now you can see those little suction things are on the outside. And then I can right click, transform, and I can use the envelope to really make it look different. And you can pull this out. You don't want to distort it too much, but you can make it look different enough without having to draw a bunch of new ones. So that's basically the process. Then I can take this and duplicate it, press V, pull out that one, and I can free transform it, make it a little smaller, and rotate it. So I think you guys know how to build these shapes. I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm just going to get one more leg in there. Okay, so once you have all your layers, you can make shape tweens for these two if that makes sense for yours, but I'm going to do a motion tween for mine. So I'm going to convert all to a symbol. And this is where I want to get careful about naming because we're going to have a lot of stuff in the library. So I'm going to call this Octo Leg 1 and press OK. And then I'm going to click on this, right click, convert to symbol. I'm going to call that Octo Leg 2, press OK. And now you can see here in the library, because I named them the same in the beginning, it's alphanumerical, the way it's organized. So they're all going to be grouped together. So I can quickly go into my library and see what's what. Otherwise, when you have a lot of stuff in your library, it can get super confusing. So this is a really good time to practice being organized. So I'm just making all of these into symbols. I'm naming them. And leg 4, and then the head, make sure I get the eyes. So because I need the eyes and I don't want it to copy funny, I'm just clicking here on the layer and I'm right clicking, convert to symbol, and I'm calling this Octo Head. Okay, so now they're all symbols and I can come here and create motion tween, create motion tween, right click, just creating motion tween on all the layers. Oops, so I have to click on the first keyframe and create motion tween. And I think for what I'm going to show you, 1 second is enough. So then you can just come in with each leg, and I'm in my free transform tool, which is Q on the keyboard, and I can just make some subtle adjustments. And so they animate a little bit. And I'm just moving my time indicator, and then I'm animating each leg. So I don't want them all going at the same time because I want it to look a little more natural. So I'm just moving the time indicator down a little bit and animating each leg, because this is going to go along the motion path. So it doesn't really need to be, we don't need to really move it because it's going to move by itself. I'm just making the legs move, so it's going to add a little more interest while it's moving along that path. Okay, and then I'm going to start making them bigger again. So I'm going to go back to the first one and make it a little bigger, have it stretch out. So I'm just like kind of stretching and shrinking them and having them rotate. And I'm moving my time indicator so it has a more natural look. And you can spend like obviously a lot more time on this than I'm spending. But we want it looking like it's just moving a little bit. And yours could be like a baseball rotating, it could be any kind of, it can really be anything that you want. Okay, so then I'm just gonna scrub through and we can see its little legs kind of moving funnily. So I could make the head like maybe squish a little bit. Slowly, let's see how that looks. So remember, since it's a library animation, that will repeat over and over again. So for now, for our purposes, that's fine. I'm gonna save this because I never saved it. So make sure to save often. Okay, so now we're gonna come back into the scene. So I'm gonna press on the scene, come back in here, and we're going to see if we press play, we can see that those tentacles are moving, and you can spend more time making your loop look better than mine looks right now. I'm gonna zoom out, and we're gonna make the motion path for our little octopus to move along. So we need a new layer for that. I'm back in the scene, I need a new layer. I'm gonna call it motion path, and I'm gonna lock my octopus for now. And all we do is draw the path that we want it to follow. So you can use the pen tool for this. If you click on here, the pen tool, it's P, and if you haven't used the pen tool before, I'm gonna have mine starting off. So you just click, and then you click again and you drag it out for a curve, and then click again to drag it out for a curve. So think about the shape you want it to make. You know, mine's swimming in the ocean, so it's gonna, and I'm gonna have the shark come, so I'm gonna have it like turn around. So I want it to start here and then end here. And you can adjust these points with the sub-selection tool, which is A on your keyboard. You can just click on them and you can adjust the handles. You can make them, you have to click on it to select it, and you can drag them around. If you want to delete some, you can come back in the pen tool and click on the little white part to get more options, and you can go to the delete anchor point tool. Like maybe this one wouldn't be good, and I can just delete that and smooth it out. You can also add more anchor points. You could also do this with the pencil tool if you wanted to. It's totally up to you. I think the pen tool is a little cleaner. So I'm clicking on the motion path, and that's all set up. That's where my octopus is going to move along. Okay, so now I'm selected on my motion path. I'm right clicking over here, and I'm adding classic motion guide. So I just right clicked in my layer and said add classic motion guide. And you can see it looks correct when it's this little curved guide. It makes a new layer. But you can see there's nothing in it yet. The motion path is still on the layer that I just selected. So we need to put the path that we drew into this guide layer that we just created. So I'm selected on the motion path. I'm gonna copy and delete it by doing Control X. And then I'm coming into my guide, and I can do edit, paste in place. So now I'm clicking on the eye, we can see that the path that we created is in that guide layer. So now we need to get the illustration, right, the octopus, into this layer. Okay, so if you had locked your octopus, just make sure to unlock it, and then you can click on there to select it. And all we need to do is drag this illustration layer. Can you see how the motion path here is sort of indented? That means it's part of this guide. It's become a part, it's indented, so it's in this guide layer. So we need to take the octopus layer and get it indented in the same way. And to do that, you just click and drag it up here. And now we can see that the octopus is indented in there. Okay, so now that the octopus is underneath the guide layer, we need to attach the octopus to this actual line. So when I click on it, remember if you had yours locked, just unlocked it. You see this little circle here, and this circle will snap on to the line. Anywhere you put it on the line, it will just kind of, it's hard to explain when you're not doing it, but you'll feel it kind of like a magnet attach on there. So on the first frame, you want to get it at the beginning, and then on the last frame at 12 seconds, get your time indicator, click here in my octopus layer, in your illustration layer, and press F6, and then you want to snap it onto the end. But nothing's happening, right? It's just jumping. So we need to set it up a little more. There's a couple more things we need to do to make it actually move along the path. I'm going to come back to my first frame. And so what we need to do is make a classic tween. So I'm on the first frame of the illustration layer, my octopus layer here, and I'm right clicking and I'm doing create classic tween. It's still not working. So I'm clicking on here, I'm clicking on my tween, and we can see in the properties, we can orient to path. So you can click that orient to path, but mine wasn't working, and it was because I had to come back to my first frame and I had to kind of re-snap my circle on there because I think I had it too close to the edge. So if yours isn't working, now let me show you, now it's working. If yours isn't working, just come back to frame 1 and make sure it's snapped on there, and make sure at the last frame it's snapped. The circle is sort of attached to this line, and then it should move along the path automatically. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and now we can make some adjustments along our path. So we can do things like anywhere along here I can press F6 to make a keyframe, and I can come into my free transform and I can make this bigger or smaller. So I can hold shift and make it bigger. It will start getting smaller again because it's the smaller size at the end. So if you want it at the last keyframe, so if you want it to stay large, you have to come to the last keyframe, hold shift, and make it the size you want it to be. So because there was a keyframe at the end here, it would go back to the smaller size. Also, if you want it to be rotated, like if it's not moving along the path the way you want it to, you can at any point press F6 and come into the free transform tool, and you can rotate it so it's moving along the path the way you want. So if it's not exactly the way you want, like over here, I want it to be rotated so it's still moving away like that. So I'm going to press F6. I'm going to click on it with my free transform tool, and I'm going to rotate it so it's like that. So that is looking better for what I want. Let's see, fit in window. So let's play it and see how it looks. So it's good if it's coming from off the stage, because I think that looks more interesting. So it's the library animation, so it's moving, and it's moving along the path, and you can add keyframes and adjust it as much as you want along that path. So we're going to do what's called the stacking order, those starfish that I showed you in the beginning. So it looks like it's moving in between stuff. So it gives it a little more depth. So I'm going to create a new layer and create a starfish. Okay, so new layer. I'm going to take it out. I don't want it in the guide, though you can have multiple things on that path. You can make more than one thing go on that path. So I'm going to call this starfish. And I like to zoom in to draw stuff, especially if it's a small thing. And I'm going to make a little starfish up here. So I'm going to pick a color. I want to make it contrast enough to so we can see it against the octopus. And I'm coming in with my brush, and I'm making a smaller brush. And you know, you can look up examples of starfish, or sometimes I look up like cartoon examples, so like, because those can help break down the shapes a little more. And you'll spend a lot more time on yours, obviously. And then it's always good to add some details. So I'm going to come in maybe with some pink, and I'm going to make a smaller brush. So I'll make some dots, and then I'll press the right bracket to make my brush a little bigger. And so this is just a quick way, but adding these extra elements, these details, can really make your project look a lot better. and then you can do one big one in the middle. So there's one starfish. So I can just duplicate this, right click, duplicate layers, and I can just leave it called starfish copy. I can press V, my move tool, and just move it out of the way. So these are gonna be the things that show depth. So I'm gonna have one, and since it has all the little dots on it, I don't wanna just select it because then the dots won't come with it. So I wanna select from the layer up here to make sure I have everything. So I can, maybe this one will be the one in front. I can go into my free transform, press shift and make it a little bigger, and I'm gonna have my octopus go behind that. So for the octopus to go behind it, right now the starfish is below it and the octopus is covering it up. To have the starfish be in front, all I need to do is drag this layer up on top, and now the starfish is in front. And maybe the octopus is too big. Maybe I need it to be smaller in the beginning. So I can come here to this keyframe and I can hold shift. I'm in my free transform tool and I can just make it smaller. So it makes more sense to be behind that starfish. And then this starfish, the one on the bottom, I'm gonna move it over and we'll see it, and then the octopus will cover it up. So we can see then it gets covered. So I want you to do, this is called the stacking order on the layer. So I want you to do that with a couple different objects and have it look like there's some spatial depth in here, so that your object looks like it's moving forward or backwards. And that just gives the illusion of depth. And then we can make these starfish just quickly be animated. So we can add a motion tween, and you can just press OK for this. And I'm gonna name this starfish though. For what I'm just gonna have it rotating slightly, so I can come down the timeline and I can just rotate this, and it will automatically add a keyframe and make it rotate slowly. And then I can come to the end and you can have it rotate the other way. So it goes one way and then the other, and you can have it move fast or slow. And same with this one, just right click, create a motion tween. You can press OK for this. It's okay if it's that movie clip thing. And then we just move down the timeline a little bit and have it. So however many times you rotate is how it will go. So that will depend on the speed of it. And then I can come to the end here and rotate it more. You can obviously spend a lot more time having yours move. So we can see, test it out, see the octopus going behind the starfish and then in front of the other one, getting bigger. So it looks like it's coming closer to us. And mine's a little choppy. I want you to spend obviously more time on yours. Okay, so now we're gonna work on creating an armature. It's creating some bones. So I'm gonna show you first how to do it with just circles so you can get the basic idea, and then I'll show you how to put it into an illustration like my shark. So I'm making sure to come back to frame 1 because I don't wanna animate anything by accident here. And you can even lock everything while you're practicing the armature. So I'm just gonna come out here to outside of the stage to show you what that looks like. I'm gonna make a new layer and just call it practice. And I'm gonna bring it down here. Okay, so I'm just gonna make a few ellipses. Let me get a color that you'll be able to see on your screen. And I'm not gonna have it a stroke, so I'll just have it filled. And I'm in my ellipse tool here. I'm gonna make like a little snowman, an orange snowman. So I'm gonna make 3 ellipses or circles, and I need to convert them all into a symbol. So I'm just gonna right click, convert to a graphic symbol, and I'm gonna call it snow head. I'm gonna right click on this one, convert to symbol, snow middle, and right click, convert to symbol, snow bottom. So you can see again why I get in the habit of naming them, the first part of the name always the same, so that they're organized in my library really clearly here. Now if I need to find the snowman pieces, they're all together there. So I drew them separately, but in order for the bones to work, the armature that we're going to create, I need to have them overlapping just a little bit. So I'll actually leave one not overlapping so you can kind of see what happens. Okay, and then we have a tool, you may have noticed it, it's a little bone tool. And this is like pretty simple. You just click on the bone tool and you click and drag. And then you click and drag again. And now you can see it says, nope, it doesn't like that. It needs it to go into the overlapping shape. So I can come into my move tool here, which is just V on the keyboard, and they're all connected. And they're all moving together. And you can really do a lot with this. It's pretty awesome. So it automatically created a layer here called Armature. You can see it. And now all of those, the practice is what I drew them on. If I turn on the eye off practice, they're all gone from there. They all exist in the Armature now. If I turn off the eye there, it disappears. So it automatically made it a tween for us. So we don't even need to make it into a tween. All we need to do to move it is take the time indicator down the timeline and make some movements. And then you can really do anything. So this is just to give you an idea of what this tool does. So I'm just moving the time indicator. I'm in my selection tool and I'm moving stuff around. We can see what that looks like. You know, and however, if they're close together, it's going to be a faster movement. Like I had mine pretty far apart for that first keyframe, but anytime you move, it automatically makes a keyframe. So that is, I feel like, really fun to play with, and I want you to think of something super creative to make with your armature. So some things that can happen if you had, let me go back. Okay, so I'm going back to before I drew my armature. So if I had like multiple things selected, I'm just gonna shift select, and I come into my bone tool. Oh, it's letting that work. Sometimes it doesn't work if like multiple things are selected, so just be careful how things are selected, how things are overlapping. Pay attention to if the armature has that little cross on it and it can't move, it can't make another bone. And then also if you do something like this, this is going to get all messed up because it's attached to the bottom one. They're both attached to the bottom one. So that's not what you want if it's a snowman. So it matters the order that you draw your bones is important. So I'm coming back to the bone, and so I want to think about the order of how they're connected. So I'm clicking on the bottom, and then I'm connecting it to the where like I think the joint would be, where I want it to move, and then to the top. And then I'm pressing V on my keyboard and moving it around. So think about whatever shape, whatever animation you're making, think about where they're connecting and where they're moving and how you want your object to move. One thing that can be annoying with this is that when you make it automatically makes a keyframe when you move it, right? But it's just moving the joints when you're in the move tool. If you want to move the position, you have to come in the free transform tool, and this is a good time to learn that key command. It's Q, and you have to select all three. So you have to hold shift and select. So all three of my pieces are selected, and then I can move it. So that's how you move the position. So just be aware of that. Get in the habit. I'm going to press V, and I can move in my move tool each little piece, and that will automatically make a keyframe. But if I want to move the whole thing together, I have to be in my free transform, which is Q on the keyboard, and I have to make sure all three are selected. So I'm shift selecting all the pieces. Okay, so that's one thing that can trip students up. So just make sure you have all three selected or however many pieces you have in order to move them. So you're just really thinking about your movements, how they're going to work. Okay, so you can use stuff made in Illustrator and bring it into Animate. If you like the tools in Illustrator more, you can get a little more detail with shading and stuff. If you've been frustrated with the drawing in Animate because you're used to drawing in Illustrator, you can do that. I'm going to put a link to one of my tutorials from the Illustrator course, the Illustrator online course, of how to use the knife tool and how to use the live paint tool. So if you want to draw it in Illustrator, you can. This is optional, you don't have to do it, but I just want to show you how this works. So now I'm in Adobe Illustrator and I created a shark in here. Let me get my other shark open and show you. So I built this shark and I did it using the pen tool, and then I used the knife tool to add the details and the shading and stuff, and I did it really quickly so it's all grouped together now. But in order to make the armature, like you just saw with the snowman, I want to remove the tail and remove the head so I can have the tail and the head move. And you can think about other ways that you can do that too. So I always keep one intact copy of my illustration, so I can always go back before I start cutting it up. In case I mess up, I can always go back. So I'm going to press Control-C, and again, just watch the Illustrator video if you need help with that. And I'm going to turn these off. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to press Control-V. So now this shark is in a new layer. I still have this intact one over here in my gray area that I can come back to in case I make a mistake. So I have this all in here and I'm calling it shark body because this is what I'm going to bring into Animate. So I have the shark body. I'm going to ungroup it because I had them all grouped. So I'm just right clicking and ungroup and then ungroup again. And now that looks better. Okay, so I'm going to cut off the tail and I'm using my knife tool. It might be underneath the eraser tool. So I'm just coming to my knife tool and you have to draw from outside the object. So I'm just kind of cutting it like that. And now I'm coming to my selection tool, which is V on the keyboard, and I'm holding Shift and selecting just the tail. I'm going to copy it with Control-C and then I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to make a new layer and I'm going to call it shark tail, and then I'm going to edit, paste in place. And I think you could see when we did the snowman that you might want this to be a little bigger so it has room to move around, and you want it to be overlapping a little bit. So you can really come into your Illustrator file and make this look awesome. I can also come into my direct selection and move these points around to get them looking good. So you can spend a lot more time on this. Okay, now I'm going to cut off the head. So I'm back in my knife tool and I'm just making a cut for where I want the head to be. I'm in my selection tool, which is V on the keyboard, and I want to make sure all the eyes and everything are selected. So I'm drawing a marquee selection. It picked up some other things I don't want, so I'm just holding Shift to deselect the stuff I don't want. So I'm Control-C to copy the head, and then I'm deleting it, and then I'm making a new layer and calling it shark head, and I'm edit, paste in place. And again, I can make this a little bigger with the Shift and have it overlapping a little bit. So when I bring it into Animate, and I can come with my direct selection and just pull this anchor point in. That doesn't look so good. So make sure I'm on that anchor point and I can just get it in. So you can spend a lot more time getting yours looking great. But for now, I think that's fine. So I just have it broken up into 3 sections. And then I can, with my selection tool, I can select the whole thing and Control-C to copy. I can come into Animate. I have it in my clipboard. And I'm going to go Fit in Window. I'm going to make a new layer and call it Shark. And I can Control-V to paste. And now this comes up we want to maintain the layers because we just spent all that time cutting it up. So you can just leave, these are the defaults, so you can just leave that and paste it in. And now you can see the layers that I named are all in here automatically. So I didn't really need to make a shark layer because they made their own layers. But I think I'm just in the habit of making a layer. You can make a folder and call it shark. And I can take all of the layers that were just created and put them in that shark folder. So just to stay organized, I'm gonna delete this layer that I made because I don't need it. So I can select on here and I can hold shift and get it bigger. I also need it flipped around. So while I'm in here, I can transform and I can flip horizontal because I want it coming towards my, my little octopus here. Okay, so we're gonna add an armature to the shark. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit because I want my shark coming from off the stage here. So I'm clicking on my shark folder so I can select the whole thing, and I'm starting it off the stage. I'm gonna make it a little bigger because I want it to be looking big and scary. So I'll start it around here. And then I'm gonna add my armature to my shark. So I'm gonna open this up so we can see what's happening. So first I need to make all of these into symbols. So I'm just selecting shark tail, right-clicking, selecting shark tail, right-clicking, convert to symbol. I'm gonna call it shark-tail, so I stay organized in my library. Then I'm selecting the shark head, right-clicking, convert to symbol, calling that shark-head. And then I'm clicking the shark body, right-clicking, convert to symbol, shark-body. So that's all in there as a symbol. Now we can add the armature. So I'm just gonna come into my bone tool. I'll zoom in here. And I'm gonna start from the tail and I'm gonna draw. You can see it's telling me, no, I can't do that right there. It's happy with the joint there. And then I'm gonna draw another one. I don't want the head. I think the head started around there. Now I'm gonna come to V, my move tool, and just check how it moves. So this obviously is not perfect. You can spend a lot of time setting up your illustration once you see how it works to get yours looking good. So let me get it back. So I'm at frame 1. On my armature here is where my shark is, and you can see now all these layers. I had 3 different layers, but now they're all in the armature together. So you can even delete these shark layers that came in because we don't need them anymore. So we're just on our armature. It automatically created the motion tween, so we can start moving it, moving the position and moving the head and the body and the tail. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. So I have it set up where I want it to start, and then the octopus, get my time indicator. The octopus is moving forward, and around here I want the shark kind of moving towards the octopus. So to move the position, remember I have to be in the free transform tool. So I have to select on all the pieces of my armature. So I'm holding shift and making sure my whole shark is selected. And then I'm moving the position up. And then I want to come into my move tool and I want to get this head like moving up. So we can see that looks like that. And then I can come down a little further and I can come into my free transform, hold shift, make sure all 3 are selected, and I can come closer to the octopus. I can even rotate the whole thing a little more, and then I can come into my V, my selection tool, and I can move my bones a little bit. And you can select each one and see how they work. So just moving each joint slightly, and then you're kind of checking how it looks, how the movement looks. And then obviously maybe mine needs to be fixed a little bit, but we can have the shark chasing the octopus, and you can have it getting faster or slower, and you can adjust all of these movements throughout. So just the important thing to remember is that it's the free transform and shift and select everything to move the whole position, and then it's the move tool, which is V, to move the bones and pieces of your armature. And just be careful because it can get a little crazy, and you don't want, you don't want it to look like that. That's obviously not realistic. So you can just Control Z to get it back. So remember, the closer your keyframes are, the faster it is, and just make yours look as interesting as possible. Think about your stacking order, think about the other elements you have moving in here, and get really creative and have fun. One really important thing I almost forgot, we don't want to see this line here of the path. So to get that to go away, all you do is on the guide that we created, the motion path guide, you just turn the eye off. And then that path is invisible, but the object is still, my octopus is still moving around it. So that is a super important thing. Do not forget to turn the eye off on the path. So we don't want to see the line of the path there. We want it to be off. And you're just going to export this the same way you've been doing the other ones. So I'm sorry I forgot that. That's a super important thing because that would be very distracting in your animation, and I can become blind to stuff sometimes. So I had path blindness here. All right, have fun.